Super Science Smorgasbord Lesson 2 about science illusions. Our first activity is a teacher demonstration about magic arcs. Again, at the end of the lesson, we have some learning objectives we would like the students to know. And those are: describe that optical illusions can trick our eyes and brains, and observe and explain that the arcs are actually the same length, and the secret is that the longer outside edge of the bottom arc is being compared against the shorter inside edge of the top arc. Hi, I'm Josh Morris with Science Matters, and this is Super Science Smorgasbord Lesson 2, all about science illusions. Our first activity today will be magic arcs, which deal with the way your eyes see things and how that information is sent to your brain. And that's really what science illusions are all about. We're tricking our brain into seeing things that aren't there, seeing things in a different way than they really are, all because of the way our eyes take in light and send that information via the optic nerve back to our brains. So our first activity is called magic arcs. This is actually a very old magic trick that fools our eyes and our brains into thinking we're seeing something that we're really not. And as I hold these up, we look down at them and notice that the top one seems smaller than the bottom one. It's shorter. Now I flip them, and without doing any kind of magic, because science is never magic, even though a lot of times things that look like magic are science, look at that. We flipped them, and now the top one again seems like it's shorter. We can keep moving them back and forth, and every single time we do it, the one on top seems like it's shorter. Whereas in real life, when I put them right on top of each other, we notice they're the exact same length. The reason why this works is that we're fooling our brains. These are two parts of a circle. They're arc lengths of a circle. And if we look across the bottom here, this bottom is shorter than the top. And so as we compare whichever one's on top, this arc length is shorter than this arc length. And so every single time, the magic arc that's on top looks like it's shorter than the one that's on the bottom. This is Super Science Smorgasbord Lesson 2, the hole in your hand hand-on activity. Our activity learning objectives are that students will be able to observe and explain that their brains make what they see from two different images, one from each eye, which is called binocular vision. They will also be able to explain that this is an illusion that happens when the brain tries to put together the image from each eye and guesses to create the hole in the hand. This activity is called hole in your hand, and once again we're going to use our eyes to fool our brains into seeing something that's not actually there. All you need for this activity is a piece of paper that we rolled up into a tube. And the way it works is we keep both eyes open, we put the tube up to one eye, and we look about 10 to 15 feet down the road. So not right in front of us, we're looking just a little bit away. And then what we do is we slowly take our other hand and bring it up until both hands meet, keeping both eyes open. And all of a sudden, it looks like there's a hole in your hand. We can move it away, and now we see two different images, but again, when the hands are right next to each other, it looks like now there's a hole inside of my left hand. The reason why this works is that we have what's called binocular vision. Both eyes are looking at the same time, and that information is being sent to our brain in order to kind of piece those two different pictures together to make one overall image. We're fooling our brain because one image is seeing through the tube, the other image is trying to see the hand, and we're fooling our brain into stitching those images together in a way that makes it look like there's actually a hole inside of my left hand. This is Super Science Smorgasbord Lesson 2 about science illusions, and this is the Rainbows Everywhere hands-on, take-home, and teacher demonstration activity. Our activity learning objectives are that students will be able to observe and explain that white light is actually made up of all the colors of the rainbow, observe and explain that each color of light has its own signature and bands or wavelengths of color that make up the color of light we see. Observe and explain that the three primary colors of light are red, green, and blue, and observe that these three colors will mix to create white light. This activity is called Rainbows Everywhere, and it's all about the illusion of light. Whether we're outside looking at the sun, we're sitting in a classroom underneath fluorescent light bulbs, all of that light coming down looks like it's white. But in reality, that white light is made up of all of the colors of the rainbow. And that's how we get a rainbow after it rains. All of those water droplets in the air take the white light from the sun and they bend it. And in science we call that refraction. Those little water droplets are just like a prism, and that prism bends that white light into the colors of the rainbow. So in order to do this activity, the first thing we're going to do is show the students a CD. And as light hits this CD, some of that light's reflected, like from a mirror. Some of the light is then refracted as well. It's bent. And the white light coming from the ceiling is actually bent into all of the colors of the rainbow. We can see red, orange, yellow, green, blue, all the way down to purple. And it just so happens that red light's always bent the least. Purple and blue light has always bent the most, which is why whenever we see a rainbow, it always has red on top and purple on bottom. This is Super Science Smorgasbord Lesson 2 about science illusions, and this is the Elevator Up take-home activity. Our activity learning objectives are that students will be able to observe and explain how a pulley can be used as a simple machine to raise and lower an object, and explain that sometimes we can fool our eyes and brains with illusions that look magic and are really easily explained by science. And this is our last activity for Super Science Smorgasbord Lesson 2 called Elevator Up. And it's a take-home project for the students. And it's kind of like a magic trick. We're going to use some simple machines and a pulley in order to fool what people see to make something that looks like it's moving on its own. Now for prep, what I'm going to do is take the string with nothing on it, attach the duct tape to it, and put it inside of the tube as far up as I can get it, about an inch or so. So I'm just going to slowly move this up inside of my tube until I get the tape out of the way. I'm going to press it down really well with my fingers. And so now we have a tube with a string coming out of it. And once I tie my little plastic ring to the other string, I'm done with my prep. Now it's time to make our elevator up, our illusion that looks like it's moving on its own. To do that, I'm going to hold on to the string that has nothing on it, take my little ring and slide it over that string. I continue to hold it in place. And now I'm going to take the string that's attached to the little ring. I'm going to feed that down through the tube until it comes out of the other end. This usually takes a second. Of course, the string wants to stick to everything around it. If I can feed it down in there until it comes out of the other end. So now I have a tube with string coming out of both ends. The last step is to flip the tube over so your hand that was on top is now on bottom, and I can slowly pull with my bottom hand. And as I do that, it looks like the tube is magically rising up the strings. I can slowly let go and it moves back down, and I slowly pull with my bottom hand and the tube moves up the string. It's almost like we're asking the students to think really hard about the tube rising as you slowly pull with that bottom hand so they don't notice it's moving up, and then think really hard about the tube going back down and slowly moving our hand so it looks like it's moving on its own. So they can amaze their family and friends with their cool elevator up magic illusion that looks like it's moving up and down, all because of a pulley made by that little plastic ring and the string inside of the tube.